Hello everybody and welcome back to our channel. Today we're going to be discussing, is it possible that Bitcoin could potentially be making a comeback? And what about Cardano? It has been looking very, very ugly, and can we see any positive light at the end of that tunnel? Let's get started. Guys, if you haven't already, do subscribe, drop a comment, hammer on the like button, and let me know what you think. Alright guys, looking at Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is doing fairly well today. It is actually doing fantastic. So fantastic, it has actually made a new high. So what we were speaking about just a few days ago, we were talking exactly about Bitcoin kind of moving sideways, looking pretty bearish here kind of, and that is right. So we had the prediction that potentially it could drop below 55,000, and it could, depending on if it was actually going to break out of this sideways movement in a positive light. Well, today that's actually what happened. Taking a look, as you can see, we have it moving up. It has actually made that new all-time high. Not too much, but still doing pretty well. So it didn't like make this huge all-time high, right? It wasn't like $5,000 or $6,000, but it did actually come up to break that. When we're speaking about actually breaking that, when it came here to about 65,000, well, today is at about 66. So about $1,000 more, which is still pretty good. And it's still hanging out. Doing pretty well. So we're going to see coming from this, it was doing this kind of model of like 1 2 and then 1 3 1 3 1 2. So we have the 3 in the green right now, the candle. So it's looking, actually, when we're looking at the daily, it is looking rather bullish. So that's where we want to watch out for too and hold on. We definitely want to see it kind of come up and around in this area to kind of really make it a little bit more stable, right? To kind of make more of a prediction here at this point. But as we stand at the moment, we're not quite there. So it's doing fantastic for the week. It's doing a lot better as well. You can see here it is doing better from what we had, that sideways movement. So that's what we're looking for. So we want to see it continue to do that. Now, remind you, being in the winter, the same when we had the same situation here. Right, so looking at the weekly, this is what we had, right? So we had this from February to May, this sideways movement, which it kind of moved up and kind of dropped down and moved up again. And that's what I want to see from here. Not that I want to see it drop down, but I want to see if that is actually what's going to happen, if it's going to mimic. So even when we're speaking about on the lower time frame here, we still had that same movement back here in January. So it's still that winter, how it's moving down and sideways, and then it kind of came back up. So it's the same. And that's what we had. And even the same movement here in June. So I would expect it to kind of keep moving a little bit, going up a little bit higher. See the same, almost that same pattern from Bitcoin when we're coming from July, right? And this is the weekly, right? So this is the weekly. So you see we had that high here. And then like a couple of weeks later, we had that other high. And that's what I'm thinking is going to do the same. So I'm going to keep my eye on it. It's still too close for me to call it, see if it's actually going to fall right yet, because it is looking very different. But at the same time, it's not. So we want to hope this is going to stay the same. Of course, when Bitcoin goes up, of course, all of the other coins are going to go up as well. But we'll take a look at the rest of the market in just a few moments. All right. Speaking of Ethereum, Ethereum is still killing it. Ethereum is still doing very, very good. We had that high back here. This is the daily. We had the high back in September that was doing really well. It is just moving in a complete upward way. Now, what I'm starting to see is it is staying on this lower half here, which isn't too great. We could potentially kind of go down a little bit more. We do want to see that it's going to break out of that and continue to move a little bit higher. But for the daily, it's still doing pretty good. It's still doing pretty killer at 4,700. Still doing pretty well in my eyes. So it's right here at $4,740, right? So still hanging out, but we do want to see it actually kind of get out of that, out of this lower half here. So we don't want to see too much of that, right? All right. So speaking of Cardano, and this is where we want to watch too, right? So when we're looking here, let's get out. We'll go back to this in just a moment. But Cardano is still moving down, and when we look at it, it's still moving downward. In this lower half as well, and that's also not what we want, right? So when we're speaking on that, right, it's been moving sideways, it's still slow, it's practically dead. We might as well send it to a cemetery, but it is looking better on the daily. this lower half here, when it's standing over in this area, in this upper half, it has potential to actually become bullish and actually break out and run with it, right? But what we're seeing is kind of a breakdown. And of course, when we're speaking about on the daily, now people are buying into the dip, right? But it's not quite good enough yet. And when we can actually start to see more of a moment where it's actually going to kind of start to rise a little bit, then we can actually speak on that, right? So that's where we want from this point. It could be a couple of weeks, possibly. I would say 1, 2 weeks. Honestly, 3 weeks. I'd keep an eye on it, and it could start to climb back out of this hole. But I wouldn't expect it to really make anything too spectacular. We kind of want to see it really move until about right here. Right in this line, right? That's where we want to at least see it to kind of come back up yet. But that's going to be a couple of weeks at a time. So we'll see. For the weekly, it looks much, much better than what we had. So it is still being bought into, but I think more and more people are going to look at this as an opportunity to actually buy into. So we'll see that as it comes our way. When we're comparing it to Bitcoin, of course, as well, Bitcoin is kind of moving sideways too, but this is the weekly. Let's go to the daily for now. All right, you can see it's still kind of moving sideways. Bitcoin is too, but it is making the climb, and that's what we're seeing, right? So when we're comparing it, it's some kind of similar. Of course, it's kind of playing off that as well. All right, Matic. Matic is also starting to move sideways. Looking at the daily, it's kind of had this little fumble here. It's kind of breaking down a little bit, but it is getting bought into, which is a really good sign. Matic's still doing pretty great. But we do want to keep an eye on it as well. So it's at $1.92. And honestly, you can't really compare too many of them. Of course, being altcoins and a big game player like Bitcoin, for example, Ethereum, you can't really kind of control too much of that, right? You can't compare, sorry. So we want to see more of what's going to happen with these individual coins, these smaller coins by themselves. But Matic's still doing pretty well. It's still kind of hanging out, bouncing off support. But we do want to see a breakthrough. Maybe they can buy into the rest of this drop. XRP is still doing pretty great too. So it is in the upper half as well of the incline. So still looking bullish. So fantastic news, right? That last big drop that we had for XRP was actually kind of back down here in September, right? And then October as well. But we have a lot of things going in. Of course, as you can see in the time frame, man, it's just a roller coaster with XRP. Still kind of waiting on the lawsuit, but I think it's going to win, and so it's just going to get bought into more, and I would expect a new high. Not too long, at least to get kind of recover from itself. Solana. Looking at Solana's starting to kind of decline too. Today it is at 245. $245, still not too great, but still doing fantastic when you look at the rest of the charts here. It's stored, of course, just the other day. We had an all-time high, so that's great news, and that's what we want to see too. So we will see it probably, that dip will get bought into, and I think we actually see a new all-time high in the next couple of days as well. But we will definitely see. All right, SHIBs. SHIB being a beta, and honestly, it really hasn't caught too much of my attention before, but people are buying into it now, and I'm not quite sure why, but they are. When we're looking at the daily, that support line is here. So, SHIB's very, very cheap, being so beta, but it is growing. And if you notice from October up until like 28th. So just in a couple of days, the 21st until the 28th, man, it just exploded. People started buying. Now, they did start selling out too, of course, it was like a week later, but started buying into it again. Now it's just kind of bouncing around, moving sideways. So we'll see from there as well, and we'll definitely be able to make some kind of conjunction, right? We'll be able to make some kind of idea of what's going to happen a little bit later. And when we're looking at the daily for SHIB, it is kind of moving out too. It's kind of dropping as well, but just to kind of show you guys what actually, like, how impressive it is to be such a beta coin and actually just explode in just a couple of days is really amazing. All right. Axis is another big one that actually started getting a lot of attention as well. Of course, with the game and altcoins, it started picking up as well. Also hanging into that upper half. And this is why I'm kind of showing you Axis today, is because when you see that they're actually hanging out in the upper half of this incline, they tend to do much, much better. And you can see some real progress. So it's looking very, very bullish as well. And it's great to see that for Axis. And even looking at the weekly is still pretty impressive. So I would expect it to continue to grow as well. All right, looking at the market today. So looking at the market, Bitcoin, of course, is for the 24 hours up 6.2%, and for the weekly 8.89. So it is kind of making that jump. Ethereum up for the day is 3.94%, and for the weekly it is at 12.46 as well. Solana is not so great for the 24-hour period, in the red by 4.04%, but the weekly is 21.84, which really shows. Cardano is actually starting to try to make this comeback, so it gives us a little bit of hope, right? So the price is hanging at about $2, $2.04. So it did actually get over $2 again, finally. So for the 24-hour period is about $2.55 in the green, and for the weekly it's at $5.75 as well. XRP, I'm really keeping a close eye on XRP. Personally, so XRP is about $1.28 right now. In the last 7 days, it's up by 9.68%, and for the weekly, it is up by 17.81%, which is actually fantastic. Polkadot for the day is up by 1.23% and up by 23.93% for a weekly. Another impressive move as well. Sheep Search, you've seen that actually kind of selling out on that as well. It is in the red by 20.56. It is in the minus for the weekly and 6.88 for the daily as well. So Polygon is another one just kind of hanging out, actually starting to move a little sideways, but still doing pretty well. And Axie Infinity, why I'm showing you this in as well, is $154. There's a lot of big things, and I would expect, honestly, in the next month or two, there's going to be a lot of new releases for games. And this is really going to push these game coins a little bit higher as well. So not just that if Bitcoin, we're not hanging on if Bitcoin's actually going to fumble or not, but if it fumbles, altcoins are going high. And based on these releases, I think these altcoins, these game coins will actually take a big benefit from it as well. So keep a close eye on it, break out your magnifying glass, whatever you need, set your alerts. But I do believe that it's a good chance to kind of buy in these coins. I think if you start to waste too much time and not buy into them, you're really going to miss out on making maybe 10x, 10x minimum. So I would definitely keep an eye on those as well. But Axie Infinity is up for the week by 15.33% as well. Big news also. We have resistance is futile. This is a really good thing. 5 things to watch in Bitcoin this week. And it's actually a really good article. Bitcoin starts a new week on a high in more ways than one. It seals its highest ever weekly close, right? So after days of painful slow progress, Bitcoin finally put in a breakout move to the upside to pass crucial levels. And that's actually really good. So it is ready to go parabolic. Some people are arguing that, so it could actually fall. The largest cryptocurrency is now firmly back on the radar of traders. But it is, and that's actually because that being dominated from those altcoins. So the large futures of gaps as well. Now, it took weeks, patience, but bulls were finally rewarded overnight on Sunday as Bitcoin took flight, reclaiming its old all-time high of 64,900 from April. Now, as in so often the case during bull runs, the pace of gains was swift, and 1 hourly candle alone seeing $2,000 added to the spot price. Now, the timing was impeccable. The timing, and coming just before the weekly close, loomed, and thus allowing a new record high of $63,270 for this weekly chart. Fantastic. Fantastic. Now, funding does grow as an extreme greed awaits, right? So, aside from the CME grab, another derivatives queue, but yet cannot among pigeons and short time frames. Now, data at the time of writing showed that funding rates access exchanges are heading back towards unsustainable territory. Right, so for analyst Dylan McClare, however, this was a little concern as no signs of leverage longs increased was evidence. Right, so Bitcoin plus 2,000 over the last couple of hours with no large uptick in futures, open interest, or perp funding. And actually, he's very right. So now miners still aren't selling. So with new all-time highs seemingly just around the corner, Bitcoin miners continue to show solid resolve and hold and not selling their Bitcoin. So they're more actually holders. Now, data from the chain analysis service CryptoQuant shows that outflows from miner wallets, with few exceptions, have stayed flat in recent weeks and months. Now, hash rate shows sheer resiliency. Now, accompanying the bullish mood among miners is corresponding up-only narrative for mining hash rate. Now, a measure of the processing power dedicated to maintaining the blockchain, the Bitcoin network hash rate continues to recover in leaps and bounds from the upheaval caused by China's ban in May. And that's actually really a close thing to watch on too. They are still trying to kind of push back on this. But of course, we recalled this before too, that it's going to come back up, that China doesn't control the market. So even though they banned it, everybody freaked out. They were really hoping that China's going to really make this big, huge play. But just as the same as it doesn't matter if it's going to actually crash it or not, it's the same amount. So so when China banned it, when it goes down, it's that same amount percentage as it can push up. So you're not really losing too much with China, but it just kind of hurt for a couple of weeks. And honestly, it did a good thing because the people that were really kind of rocky on this, they jumped ship beforehand and they're just nervous and sold out. But I can tell you the same people that really freaked back in May during this ban, they're really kicking themselves in the teeth today because they do see it going up. And so we are still watching Bitcoin to see really how it's going to play. And why I'm kind of watching for this so much, again, is because of the altcoins. Because if you have the combination of both things, if you have the Bitcoin market start to go down, people are buying into it. And secondly, when people are actually seeing these new game releases coming out, they're going to buy into the altcoins as well. So those two things combined together are really going to make a powerhouse and upticks and bull runs for these alt markets as well. So these altcoins. So that's what you want to watch for, guys. All right. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe, drop a comment, hammer on the like button. I will catch you next time, and thank you so much for joining.